Wow. So it seems at least 5,000 of you were interested in my very brief and very spontaneous video on a small feature in a Roblox game. So I figured my next video would lean into exactly that. Today I'm gonna take a look at all the major bosses added in the Nimbus update and sort of quick review them based on how much they add to the game in terms of lore, gameplay, and just general content. Fair disclaimer, I'm not some Roblox god who hits microsecond musket piercing shots. I have other games to sweat on. My file is also a warrior, so keep that in mind when I complain about things. I used to be a conjurer, but accidentally changed during full release. Conjurer got left to rot by VTEX anyway, so I'm gonna start holistically with the tower mini-bosses, like Lysara, and the roamer mini-bosses, like Delamere. Partially because there's not much to say about them individually, but also because these are fights that are essentially no different from bounty NPCs on islands, gameplay-wise. The fights themselves are complete nothing burgers. We get like 2 sentences of lore. What I'm most interested in is their drops. Not only is some of their exclusive vanity stuff like genuine grails, but new stat modifiers, where say Swift Strider gear gives you dexterity, is super cool. I think it really encourages the players to engage with other parts of the game, and it really helps against that sort of grind trance that we all eventually fall for. Next are the roamers. Here you'll find Maine, Dusk, Delamere, Evander, either on their ships or in place of a hunt NPC. Again, functionally nothing burgers, though their drops are pretty cool, and for a spirit user I recognize these guys are like the only way y'all get your weapons, so a side note is that I'm super bummed that none of their drops are dyeable except for whatever reason the Crone's stuff. Alright, let's start with the story bosses. And we're starting off pretty intense. Allanon, the Broken Prince. After full release, he's the first story boss that you fight, and he has 2 stages, one at this sort of harbor, and the other in the Nimbus Wilds. Side note, for the first stage, did Callahan just do nothing for that fight too? He just stood there, like a bum, while I was out there getting evenly roasted until golden brown. And then he had the audacity in front of the hoes to say, "Oh, I only contributed a little bit." No, bruh, you contributed nothing. Another side note, did y'all think the Callahan and Allanon stuff was a little yaoi baity too? Maybe my brain is finally mush, but I was genuinely surprised to find out that Allanon had a fiancée. And then she got poached by some nobodies. Allanon is genuinely a stronger man than I would be, because if my wife got stabbed and then called slurs by my brother, I would have glassed the whole kingdom in a single eschaton judgment. Beyond valid crash out. It's just, he had to take it out on us too. Good lord, is this fight something else gameplay wise. Mechanically, he's not too dissimilar to the sirens you see in the Dark Sea, because he just flies everywhere, and he's constantly flaming. He's flaming, the arena's flaming, I'm flaming. It's so hard to see anything. Not only is it impossible to track where he is, much less hit him, his fight is so resource demanding on my PC. I feel for y'all with lower end setups, and I also feel for y'all with fighting style builds. Just what is a berserker supposed to do in this situation? I think what I found most frustrating about Allanon's fight is that he has no tells. Normally when a boss has nukes or some other big move, they telegraph it or charge it in some way. Calvis is a great example of this, and he's a fun boss. Maybe it's because you can't see anything during his fight, but his attacks just feel so random at times. It's quite telling that I, as possibly the most privileged build type for this kind of boss, has this much to say about him. He's not a poorly designed boss. Or, well, I guess he kind of is. He just needs to be tuned quite a lot. His visuals are cool. His storyline is compelling. His drops are... but his gameplay is just plainly not great. Jarl Ivar. this two-stage Roid Rage Aura Merchant who you fight in the deck of the Fenrir. He starts out in this metal giant form, which is quite cool, though pretty easy. It's mostly there to introduce you to his gimmick, which is large, sweeping attacks in a small arena, and soften you up for his second stage, which, well, now surely VTEX heard us cry out against this boss that flits around the sky and is impossible to track and hit, and then promptly said, "Alright, I hear ya. I'll make this next one easier to hit." And then he put us in a boxed arena with size 600 moves. A lot of people struggled against this guy, me included. That being said, I think his fight is pretty good. Ivar is a huge block check because while you can dodge his attacks, which I did for the most part, his attacks are so massive and the arena is so small that it's probably going to hit you anyway. As a side effect of this, the ghost you can summon dies in like 3 seconds. Overall, he is such a pain, but he can feel good to fight just because of the huge openings he leaves out. You have to get into this cycle of hightailing it out of the blast radius, while taking advantage of his charge up time. It's cool. His attacks are cool too. He has these axe slashes that sound like whirring saw blades and this metal clap, which is so punishing, but it feels so satisfying to evade out of. I'd say his biggest weakness as a fight is that you can get severely punished if he does one of the many random unlucky chain of moves. He's definitely a wall to people just breezing through the story, but once you learn him, he can be quite fun. So that wraps it up for the story bosses, and next are the side quest bosses. These are the bosses you fight as part of the Sentinel and Stealth quest lines. Super useful tree for us casuals, by the way. The warding makes gear building super comfortable. So the first boss you'll fight for the Sentinel questline is Halburn, Last Chief of Red Wake. And what an introduction to the questline. Those of you on the Patreon know how much aura this dude had initially. Everything about this dude's design just clicks. He gets his own arena, this eerie, foggy outcrop in the jaws. He wields this dual axe maw thing, and his gouge out eyes is super metal. His story's cool too, because we've heard of him right from the beginning of the game, and it's quite satisfying finally seeing what truly happened despite how tragic it is. The fight is nothing crazy. I'm not surprised. He's the first boss of the questline and he's meant to be accessible to most players. I mean, he's right there in the starting zone and his gear starts at level 90. He's this sort of mobile brawler who likes to teleport and move in arcs, but you can easily dodge out of all of his attacks. I really don't got anything else to say. He's super easy and doesn't really have any moves that the player doesn't. His weapon is pretty cool, but I haven't seen any warlords use it. Please do. Let VTEX know we love these unconventional weapons. The next Sentinel boss you fight is Jorund, Captain of the Jaw Pirates. I really like these callbacks to previous content, which these Sentinel bosses tend to do. It helps the world feel more fleshed out. His fight is unique because of how you approach it. He will always be on a ship, which you have to take down before you fight him, and it turns him into this sort of organically two-stage boss. The ship has 30,000 HP, and I often find myself in impromptu raid parties to take it down, though it's definitely not hard to do solo. As a ship on top of the normal cannonballs and such, Jorund himself will throw these ice balls at you, which I think is a cool touch. Finally, when you sink the ship and deal with his crew, the cleverness in this fight truly shows in his magic choice. I'm no mage, so I don't know if these moves are accessible to the player at all, but the way he uses ice magic to create his own arena is very unique. He has an attack where he freezes a large area, which you can fight on and walk on, and he likes to summon these ice bird cages and pillars to control the fight. Overall, it feels quite good to fight him for a sea boss. We all know how janky combat on the ocean can feel, or maybe that's just me not speaking as a no-size build. But his gear looks pretty cool and definitely differentiates itself from the several other billion Viking-themed drops in this update, though you're definitely not using it for the stats. Again, that's a common weakness you'll find for these bosses. none of their gear is really worth using in most builds. Obviously, it's still boss gear, it can still work. It just often has some wacky stat combos, which is also applicable to our next boss, Leviathan, Widow of the Waves. No, you can't fix her. I'll be forward with what I think. She's definitely one of the weaker bosses of this questline, game design wise. Her character design is cool, her drops look amazing, her gimmick is interesting, even though she definitely should have had storm magic. The fight itself leaves much to be desired, though. Leviathan's 4 moves are Lightning Surge, Wind Surge, Water Surge, and Sharknado. The surges are very boring, since they don't have any counterplay, nor are they a particularly pressing threat. You can see in my gameplay she's primarily a standstill and just DPS burst her down, which I don't think is very engaging as a boss. Still, it can be quite thrilling to see who can kill the other the fastest. Another gripe I'm sure some of you have is with the arena. It's this massive driftwood and flotsam, which is cool and fits her, it's just that it's such a pain to fight on and find. You can't really get a grip on it from the water, your attacks often get eaten by the divots between the planks. Half the struggle of this boss is making sure my guy doesn't catch his foot during a flash strike and trip over himself. But hey, at least it's not destructible. Though that's not much of a positive when it's basically pre-destroyed for you. I do appreciate that her fight takes place in the middle of the ocean. You're free to be very aerial with your fight, and this is a common theme amongst the Sentinel bosses, which is something very important I find in making sure these fights don't feel like unfair, like cramped slogs. Overall, I like her story. I want to see more of her, although I'm fairly certain she's going to be a recurring boss. I hope her game design gets improved in the further seas, but she's good enough. I always kill her when I see her, just for the drops. Now, things get serious for our next boss, King Caesar, former ruler of Ravenna. I fought all of the previous bosses with little issue on a pre-release build on my first time around, but this is the boss that forced me to update and adapt. This is because, uniquely, Caesar is a battle of attrition. He doesn't have a complicated moveset or funky gimmick. He has like 4 moves at most and they're heavily telegraphed. He just has 24,000 HP. Specifically, he has 3 stages, 4k, 8k, 12k. Rather appropriately, his attacks are sort of reminiscent of Calvis's. Their attacks are not dangerous unless you let them be. Another thing I like about this boss is that it really feels like a dance of sorts, which I think is the proper framework for a boss fight, because he'll put out a tell, and then from there you have to make the right choice to make sure you don't get destroyed by it. When he does his little lightning ball, you block. When he does his little beams, you dodge. When he does his nuke, you run. Stay on the move and take advantage of the generous damage windows, and when he does his nuke, you'll know. Just book it to the edge of the crater. Overall, a pretty good boss. Just the fact that it's a war of attrition makes it quite thrilling, because it's your 2k HP against his 24k. I remember the first time I fought him, it was like, that was pretty easy. It was just 4k health. And then he started glowing. I didn't get any drops or drachma, and I was like, oh shit. And then he did it again once I whittled down his 8k HP, which, at that point pissed me off. But overall, he's pretty cool. Design-wise, lore-wise, his drops are... we're getting into the solid territory. I like his skill on his ruined Fulminor, but otherwise, bring a friend, because this is a really well-made boss. Alright, so far the bosses have been pretty solid. So, what the hell happened with Ormolu? The gameplay speaks for itself. This is the game's first boss that you can consistently kill with a single key press. That being just hold down M1. Let's just pretend we can't do this and just look at his design and attacks. I'm gonna be honest, fighting him like normally without this exploit, which is probably going to get patched in the future, I have not beaten him solo yet. He is difficult. He is sort of like a roided up version of the roid merchant himself, Ivar, but there's nowhere to run. I'm not really sure what you're supposed to do besides block and hope his attacks, his just torrent of crystal attacks, don't kill you within 2 minutes. Design-wise, I think he's pretty cool. I was thoroughly impressed seeing that VTEX can do these sort of non-humanoid bosses just fine. I think it's pretty impressive for Roblox. I like his animations, it's very clear what he's doing, but his hitbox is a little strange, unless that's on purpose. His drops are interesting, to say the least. I guess it fits with the theme of being this crystal monster, and his lore is pretty cool. It's good to see more curse users, especially ones that have unique gimmicks like this. But for a final boss for the Sentinel questline, I gotta say finding out that exploit was pretty disappointing. Though I assume this is going to be patched out within the next few versions. There's no way they haven't noticed this. But that's the last of the Sentinel bosses.